back to the Strong Sistas YouTube channel. I am here with farmer David at First Fruits Family Farms. We are standing in a field that he just acquired from a corn farmer to talk a little bit about regenerative agriculture. So David, first, what is regenerative agriculture?
The concept of regenerative agriculture is a fundamental one that we have to understand. And the baseline of it is that when you are farming, you're not taking away more than you are putting back. So in this case, this corn farmer was constantly planting corn and growing corn and pulling nutrients out of the soil. And that's putting carbon out of the soil, releasing it in the atmosphere, and the soil health is constantly depleting. Where regenerative agriculture is saying, how can we do agriculture in such a way that we are putting more in than we are actually taking out? So it's the health of the entire climate of raising these in this case corn, versus just what more can I get out of it, a reductionist model of agriculture.
So why do we need regenerative agriculture?
So there's a few things that we have to look at as a population. And right now, if we took an analysis of our farmland and went back to say 1950, since 1950 to today, we've lost 30% of our farmable land. Through our current farming model, 30% of what we could possibly use to produce food is gone. Some studies that have just come out recently say we have less than 70 years of soil left. And then what you're standing in across the Midwest, across America, is just being depleted so badly that producing quality food, producing food in quantities will be at issue.
So that's due to like tillage, monocropping, loss of soil diversity, single crops.
Correct. So all of this, if you look at it, if you could pick up a handful of soil and look under a microscope or electron microscope, you're going to see billions of living organisms. This healthy environment under the ground, and there's far more species under the ground than there's above the soil.
I think that's hard for us to realize. We just think the world just ends.
Exactly, and we have no calculation to understand what does health look like in those communities.
Yeah.
And right now we're coming through a major pandemic and saying, okay, we as a population have health issues, we have food issues. Well, this whole pandemic is only exacerbating what has already been in place. It's just revealing what the trend line always was, and most major issues are that way. And what we found out is, as a population, even the global population, we're unhealthy. Well, the soil has been telling that for us for almost 70 years and saying, hey, we're dying too. And in this soil around us, normally soil is a carbon bank. It's amazing what soil can do, and grasses and life can do. It can grab sunbeams right out of the air, turn it into a plant, and while it's doing that, it's taking carbon out of the atmosphere and putting it back into the soil. So this farm here that we just acquired, normally soil should have or healthy soil is about 7 to 8% carbon matter in the soil, and this is probably depleted down to that 2.5%.
So this is not soil, this is dirt.
This is dirt. And what happens when carbon matter gets released into the atmosphere? Well, we know what it does. It alters climate. It changes how the solar effect of heating and global heating happens. Something that's often missed, and why we're standing here, is if we could increase the carbon matter in this soil, so that's plants are growing, roots are down in that soil, roots are dying off, getting consumed into the soil, that adds carbon. If we could increase the carbon matter of this soil 1%, this just 1 acre of soil would hold 25,000 more gallons of water when it rains. So, it's amazing when you stand in this field after a very light rain. This is just a rushing torrent through here. And there's not runoff out of the mountains or anything. This is just out of a couple acres. And things begin to happen. Dirt washes down the stream because there's no plants, no roots to hold this here.
That's an often missed point is, yes, the dirt doesn't have any nutrients anymore, but also it leads to water runoff, and that encourages more and more soil loss.
Exactly. And then when they're spraying chemicals on top of it, that's getting washed down the stream. And what's very interesting here is I've lived here for about 3 years now, and just last year they had come in here with heavy machinery and almost completely leveled this. So what you're seeing here with this little trench through here, this runoff area, this was level. They had taken it in and leveled the dirt down, and just within 1 year we have this amount of soil loss in this area. And just this concept of a monospeciated cornfield, and looking at the numbers of soil loss, if I could just say, okay, how much soil is being lost per acre, we're looking at between almost 15,000 pounds per acre per year in soil loss just from runoff and food production with this.
And theoretically, regenerative agriculture will add soil.
Correct. So our job is to figure out how can we pull off a crop, in our case, we do livestock, beef, pork, chicken. How can we pull that off of here, but yet add nutrients and make the soil healthy, which then expands that soil?
But there's unfortunately a lack of studies showing this, because who's going to fund those studies?
Exactly. And there's a lot. I mean, we look at the scale of this, and we have to really understand the scale we're up against, because modern agriculture has been at it for 100 years. And if we look at the scale of what we're up against, we have to do this. Every American or every person in the world eats about 2,000 pounds of food a year, which is quite amazing when you really think about the scale of that.
2,000 pounds.
But if you look at soil with that idea, what's the cost of soil to produce a pound of food? And in America here, the studies that we have, it says it costs us 6 pounds of soil for every 1 pound of food.
So we lose 6 pounds of soil with every pound of food that we consume.
Correct.
And with 2,000 pounds of food each year.
We're looking at 12,000 pounds of soil cost per person.
Yeah.
So that's almost a dump truck load.
And that's not sustainable long term.
Correct.
Because there's a limited supply of soil.
Right. And that's what we have to do, is saying, okay, we're not just pulling a crop. We're not a reductionist.
Yes.
We need to add into it. We need to regenerate the agriculture system.
So currently, with the current production system, it's clearly not working. But the main point is to yield as much food as possible, because people say we need that for the amount of population. So if we flip the coin, can regenerative agriculture feed the world?
That is a question that has a really tough answer. When Americans are eating 9 billion chickens a year, 25 chickens per every person, when you look at the scale of what's required, those of us that are on the regenerative agriculture side, this healthy product side, have a long ways to go. So one of the issues that regenerative agriculture have to do and look at in comparison, they'll say, okay, this chicken house can raise 1 million chickens a year. And then they'll try to compare that to what we're doing here, where we may only raise 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 chickens. But what they don't do in that comparison is saying, look at the layers of what we are doing. So one, we're adding to the soil. Second, those chickens are running ahead of cows or behind cows. It all depends on the structure that you have.
So the grazing process.
Correct. So we have far more production per acre, if you look at the speciation of what we're doing, than what a monospecies would do. The hard part is, okay, how are we going to get people back on the land? Because this style of regenerative agriculture is very hands-on. You have to get your hands in the soil. You have to walk it. You have to look at it. You have to say, okay, what species of animals can restore this part of the property back well, and then manage it.
Yeah.
And daily manage it. So you're talking about daily moves. That is what can feed the world. And I just heard this morning that the state of Iowa, if you look at the food production of Iowa and the amount of food they consume, only 10% of the food that the Iowans consume is from in-state production. And if you look at California, it's the same way.
Yeah.
So they say, well, how can we feed these major cities? Well, instead of California exporting almonds around the world or vegetables around the world, what about they worry about feeding themselves? And this is what regenerative agriculture can do. It can take a global model and say, well, let's put this local. And I can't feed the world, you can't feed the world, but together I can help feed my community. And if there's 100 of us or 200 of us, then that system can do it, because right now we have massive job losses. Global economic crisis is happening. Where are jobs going to come from? Well, I would suggest let's try food.
Yeah.
Let's get people back growing healthy food in an environment where we're putting more into the soil, where the earth is gaining weight. It should be gaining weight because that soil should be getting healthier.
And you brought this up before in a conversation where like industrial agriculture, industrial farming has had many years to figure out how to scale up. Regenerative agriculture is just lagging behind in the technology and development required to do that scaling. So we need some more engineers, scientists to figure out how can we take this regenerative agriculture model and scale it up so we can feed more people.
Exactly. Modern agriculturists had 100 years of scientific development. So it basically comes out of World War II.
Okay.
They were learning how to do nuclear bombs, hydrogen bombs, all this technology. and they realized, well, this is the same process for fertilizer. So NPK, nitrogen, potassium. So they're like, okay, then it was a Manhattan project for agriculture. And mechanicalization, modernization, so tractors got better, planting got more efficient. If you would look at production quality today, we say, well, we're raising far more corn per acre than we used to, bushels of corn. The whole reason is not we have better seed or better soil, it's because the mechanization is planting more efficiently. Yeah. Our sprayers are more efficient. So it's an efficiency improvement, not a actual structural saying we're doing better with the soil or doing better with the seed.
It's still a focus on that yielding.
Yeah.
And as a result, all the food has less micronutrients, so therefore as humans we have to consume more of it. So that leads to an obese and malnourished nation.
And we're getting to the place now where this regenerative agriculture now has money behind it, because people, those of you that are watching that buy local or buy grass-fed or that side of it, that is giving dollars into this movement that we can start doing these studies. And it's starting to come out, and it's exciting. Yeah. One of the big ones that I love is if we would let nature take over. So if I would step off this field and say, okay, I want this field to go back to nature and start being a carbon bank, restore itself naturally, it would take 500 years to grow 1 inch of soil. So I don't know about you, but that's a really long time. Versus I know farmers now that within 3 to 5 years, maybe possibly 10 years, are already adding 1 inch of soil to their farms.
That's really promising.
Yeah, so this management, this regenerative agriculture, and by people looking for those people that are doing grass-fed, intensive grazing models, a holistic management, we are restoring nature and also feeding our communities.
It is the future. It's required for the future.
It is.
All right, well, thanks so much, David. Appreciate it. And, okay, just a quick thing. Behave like an angel.
Oh, that's
okay,
right.
Ready? And until our next vlog, guys, make sure you are behaving like an angel.